Hi, Pratham here from Cow Corner Cricket Cast. I'm joined by my mate Rohan, and today we're going to be discussing the 16th match of this ICC 2020 World Cup in 2021, a showdown between the two arch rivals, the two arch enemies, if you will, nemesis, India and Pakistan.
I thought we were going to talk about South Africa and Namibia, but I think this is a far more interesting discussion to have.
Absolutely, because the script got flipped today, right, Ron?
Yep.
You know, as an Indian fan, we were looking to make it 12 out of 12 in terms of ICC matches, World Cup matches, that is to say. The record...
Instead, Pakistan had just over 12 balls left before they won. So, yeah.
Yeah, that worked out nicely. But no, the match itself was exciting to see, painful for an Indian fan, or joyous for a Pakistani fan after all these years. And me being both, my opinion was stuck in between, right? But the match itself was played in Dubai International Stadium, that is, Dubai Sports Complex Ground, as it's also known. And we saw a pitch today being prepared that was fresh for this match, which is a good thing because you want to get the best surface possible for a high-profile, high-intensity game like this. And the surface lived up to its billing as well. The previous one at this ground was actually a bit of a damp squib. England chasing down 55 or 56, whatever it was, against the West Indies. A bit of a tricky-ish pitch. Not a great advertisement for viewing a marquee contest like this. This one, much better. It had largely even pace and carry, even though it was on slightly the slower side to the keeper. And it was a bit dry and a bit low, so you did get some assistance for the turning ball and cutters and so forth, but the largely pristine climatic conditions meant that the bowlers only got, especially the pacers, only got swing within those first power play overs, effectively, the 6 overs, as you'd call it, and that combined with the fast outfield meant that the surface was largely good to bat on. 160, 170-ish total would have been par.
Honestly, it looked somewhat similar to the IPL final wicket.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right about that.
It was kind of slow, but I think there was more swing in that one than on this one. But
because of the overhead conditions. But yeah. But good pitch, and Pakistan won the toss. They chose to field first, and boy, oh boy, was that bang on the money as a decision. Because especially on this ground, right? We've seen that dew is a huge factor when the matches are being played on day-night features, like it was in this case. And because they were carrying into the night, you have a large presence of dew on the ground, and so that allows the ball to skid onto the bat, and it makes it more difficult for bowlers to grip the ball, which in turn makes it more difficult for them to sort of maintain a consistent line and length. We saw this in some of the previous matches played here as well in this World Cup. We also saw this in some of the matches in the IPL as well.
These ones, yeah.
So, I mean, good toss to win for Pakistani captain, and a really good decision to bat second, to put it politely. Yep. And we will get into why that was a good decision amongst others in detail, but before that, we just want you guys, the ones who haven't been able to watch the match or need a little bit of a refresher, we just want to give you a recap of how the match went and unfolded with the scorecards on hand. So see that and come back, because we have a lot more to say about this exciting match. So, coming on to the specifics of the match, we talked about how things went right for the Pakistani captain, and I think it's safe to say that they went right pretty much from the start, because
the first over,
because Shaheen Shah Afridi, take a bow, dude. You bowled a superlative spell within those.
Is it just me, or is he the best young bowler on the planet at the moment?
Yeah.
across all formats.
Yeah, consistently. And given the workload that he has, right? Because he is the Pakistan strike bowler, right? There are some youngsters who aren't quite in that class throughout all.
Like people talk about how great Jamieson is, right? And you and I both agree that Jamieson's a potential ATG player in the making.
Absolutely, but
he has like 3 years younger.
Yeah,
and he's been in Test cricket for 3 or 4 years now. And in T20 cricket for a similar amount of time, and ODI cricket for a similar amount of time, and he just keeps succeeding. And it's always good to see a Pakistan team with like an express left armer.
Yeah. It gives you those Wasim Akram vibes, man. Let's put it that way.
Which is simultaneously like the best feeling in the world and the worst feeling in the world.
Best feeling for a Pakistani fan and a neutral observer just loving pace bowling.
Yeah.
It's not so good if your team is on the other end, and we saw that today, right? Because those first 4 overs of the power play, he bowled 2 of them, and he put India immediately on the back foot, right? He recognized that there was going to be swing available for him in this match only during those first 6 overs, as we discussed in the pitch discussion that we had. He knew that because he's a taller guy, Rohan, the release, and he has a really high arm action, right? He's 6'4", 6'6", and he has really high arm action. It's like
he's
straight
a very
up.
large man.
Yeah, but to put it politely, right? The release that he has from that ball, right, will enable even something that's like a fuller pitch delivery to bounce more than normal bowlers. And the advantage that has against certain batters is that it makes it more difficult for them to assuredly trust the bounce that's coming in there, in the sense that because the ball bounces so much, it puts them in an awkward position, and it also just makes it more difficult for them to drive, right? So come on the front foot, right? And so knowing that those 2 things are already innate to him, and then also having the bowling intelligence and knowledge that Rohit Sharma has this known weakness towards the incoming ball from the left-hander at pace, because he has this tendency to not move his front foot much early on at the crease. He ended up bowling a perfect delivery to him, right? First up, in swinging attempted Yorker to Rohit, had him plumb, the foot tried to rapidly jerk out of the line, but it couldn't, because again, Rohit sort of struggles moving that front foot, and his back foot stayed firmly planted to the crease. Was plumb. That delivery was beautiful. 90-mile length attempted Yorker that was close to Yorker length, in swinging, just poetry in motion, right? But what impressed me even more than that, Rohan, was that second wicket of his, right? Because KL been bossing it in pretty much IPL, every other format, right? Probably one of the most consistent batsmen in the world in T20 cricket, across both in domestic and international, right? What does he do? He notices that KL has a technical glitch, right, in limited overs cricket, where he often will play across the line towards square of the wicket on the onside to deliveries that are pitched around off stump, right? So essentially, he will play at deliveries more square towards the leg side than he needs to earlier on, right? So what does he do? He adjusts his length to be slightly shorter than the Rohit dismissal. It's still relatively goodish to fullish length, but just short enough where it wasn't easy for KL to clip him, right? And he got the ball to dart back still, but then because of that length, right, and because it darted slightly back, he hit the top of middle effectively and Castle Rahul when he was attempting that clip towards mid-wicket, right? So apart from just the skill set, the bowling intelligence, right, and using your best strengths to the best advantage that you can, that was what was impressive today.
And that's always been what's been the most impressive thing about Shaheen Shah Afridi. I mean, as a bowler, it's not just that he's tall, fast, and scary, and left-armed. He's all of that, and he's also pretty smart about how he bowls and what he bowls.
After that, those 2 dismissals, right, which really shocked India, 6-for-2, crisis situation, really. Kohli comes out and proves to be the one batsman from India, right, who, after that bit of that shock, right, has the sensible approach in that top 7 from India's point of view towards constructing an innings wire anchoring to take that game deep, right? And he played sensibly on a wicket that did have some gremlins early on, but was apparent to him and some of the other neutral observers as well, right? That it was going to become a better wicket to bat on as the match progressed, right?
Right.
And I thought his innings was worth lauding today because, again, in terms of sensibility, right? Rotated the strike consistently. We always talk about how Kohli runs those ones and gets those twos because he runs really quickly between the wickets, right? And critically, right, Rohan, what was so impressive today was he understood that the weaker bowlers of this Pakistani lineup are going to probably get some overs in, the middle overs, to just slow things down. And so he recognized that without taking risks, the best approach to make sure that the run rate was kept on ticking was to take as many singles as he could. And he did it off their weaker bowlers, right? Their spinners, Shadab and Hafiz, Rauf, when he came in initially in that 10th over and so forth, right? And then when the main strike bowlers in Hassan and Shaheen, who were bowling relatively well in this match, when they erred a little bit by just bowling slightly short, he pounced around immediately. He pulled them, he cut them. It was really sensible batting because he knew that was not a conducive length on this pitch because it sat up effectively. So I thought he deserves a lot of praise. I know he's going to get a lot of flack for this match, for losing.
I mean, he is the one player on this Indian team that deserves the least amount of blame for what happened.
Yeah.
Because, he scored a 50. He did his job. He came in, he scored, he batted deep, he considered the situation, batted sensibly. The problem, I think, which has been the problem for India for the last decade almost, has been that number 4 position.
Yeah, because Suryakumar Yadav, man, oh man, that was not a good shot from him. And he was part of a trend, right? That where the rest of the middle order did not give him the adequate support he needed as the anchoring player. And critically, right, Rohan, what was disappointing to see was the batsmen in the middle order who lost their wickets. I know you mentioned Suryakumar Yadav, and we'll talk about him a little bit because it is indicative. I know you were speaking to me while the match was going on. It's indicative of a more general problem with India's selectoral mindset. And
I just want to make it very clear. While I don't think that Suryakumar Yadav should be in India's side at the moment, I don't think it's his fault. And what happened today isn't really his. It shouldn't be put at his feet as like you did this bad thing. It's something else, which we'll get to. Yeah,
but the thing that was disappointing to see from him and all the other middle order batsmen is, right, the way that they got out, because most of the batsmen here lost their wickets with either rash strokes that exposed their technical faults. So like with Suryakumar Yadav, right, he has this bit of an itch to play at deliveries that could leave alone around 7 to 8 stump. And specifically, he does this, right, off deliveries that bounce a little bit more awkwardly for him, right? Or they bounce a little higher, if to put it this way, right? Because Hassan bowled basically a delivery that was good to slightly back of a length, right? It bounced up more. Hassan's a short guy, so it bounced up a little bit more. It was almost a wide. That's how wide it was, right? But Suryakumar Yadav, because he's not a back foot player and because he feels awkward with the bounce, right? He goes chasing after deliveries that are wider of the crease, and tries to play them critically on the up with the drive shot. And he did that today, and he got out with nicking it. Rizwan accepted the catch gleefully, right? And so really that was a bad shot that was indicative of a technical fault that this guy has. But even the guys who played well today, right? Like Rishabh Pant, right? Got 39 of 30, right? Pretty decent performance from him. Used a lot of common sense earlier on in the innings, right, where he targeted a back of a length stump to stump line from Hassan Ali, and tonked him over the shorter leg side of the ground for the left-hander. So he hit 2 sixes off of him, right? It was very sensible batting to go after Hassan because he was bowling that length that was in his arc, essentially, right? And then what does he do? He attempts a wild hoik to cow corner of Shadab Khan, right? Now, Shadab Khan is a leg spinner, so he does turn the ball into him. But critically, Shadab is one of the few leg spinners in the world who relies more on his googly than his actual leg break, right? So essentially, he's
not so much a leg break googly bowler as he is a googly leg break.
Exactly, right? Which the point being with that, right, is if you're trying to hit a guy, especially when you know that their fielder stationed on the leg side, right, in the deep as well, right? You're trying to hit a guy who's bowling googlies that's turning it away from you, right? You're taking you're taking a low percentage shot because it's very likely you're going to get out that ball, and he got out to it, right? And he tried to tonk him to cow corner, really bad shot.
I think, but I also think that's sort of just like the batsman, the sort of batsman Rishabh Pant is. He doesn't respect spinners, period. So
it is, but you've got to in that situation.
Yeah, in that situation, he has to, and I think that's a little just the maturity of getting older.
Yeah,
and just understanding.
And he could have played that situation. he could have played that straighter, which is my point, right? Because it wasn't that great of a delivery, right? He could have just played it straighter. He had hit in 2 sixes in the previous over, could have left, he could have avoided it. It was just a reckless shot, really, right? And it rests, and the reason why this is important, right, is because it wrestles the momentum away from India in crucial moments in this match, right? Just when that Punt and Kohli for example, right, that Punt and Kohli partnership gets started, what happens? They lose a wicket just when they're starting to put a little bit pressure on Pakistan. Immediately lifts that pressure. Pakistani bowlers are able to tighten the screws a little bit more. Coming back to one of the things that you wanted to talk about, right? The problem with the middle order as well is they don't have a guy who's solid and can assure them of performances at that number 4 spot. And Rohan, your point is that this has been a recurring issue, right, for India?
Yeah, this has been an issue again since the 2011 World Cup, and really since 2013. The problem is, and this is a problem for India, is that India looks at the 2011 World Cup from sort of an organizational standpoint as the apogee of Indian cricket, right? You won a World Cup on home soil in an almost miraculous sort of way. You knock out pretty much every big team and then you win it. But since then, India really hasn't had that much success, barring an odd Champions Trophy here and there, in terms of internet. Which sounds kind of, I'm going to be real, that sounds kind of like pretentious and stuff. But India's probably been the best team in limited overs cricket in that period.
Yeah, and it has been, they've consistently underperformed, right? And right. To your point, right, so, that number 4 spot, right?
The number 4 spot is a problem because India want one kind of player. They want Virat Kohli from 2011 to play that role.
Yeah.
The problem is Virat Kohli is still in the squad, but he's not Virat Kohli from 2011. He's Virat Kohli from 2021, which is an entirely different kettle of fish.
Yeah. A guy who's an anchor mainly, right?
Yeah.
Who's provides stability of that batting order at number 3 and is very versatile, but is there because he forms a crux of the top 3 that India rely on in limited overs formats.
But in specifically in what they want from 2011 Virat Kohli is that they want that flamboyant guy who can just hit a cover drive for 6, guide one down to past the third man, play all the shots and be this aggressor. What they don't realize, and I think this is something they might just be organizational philosophy and stuff like that, in which case they probably know more than we do, but in my opinion, the reason the guys that they keep selecting at number 4 are guys that are finishers, guys that come into the squad at number 5, number 6, number 7, which is not how this Indian team is set up.
Yeah.
They're looking at the number 4 as an extension of the finishers, when really they should be looking at number 4 as a balance, as a sort of guy who can come in and hit those big sixes when they need to, but also the guy who can manage a game. Because the fact is, number 4, you lose 2 wickets in the power play, number 4 is in.
Yeah. And
now you have to think about, okay, we have 3, maybe 4 batsmen left.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
And then to your point, right, the guy who comes in at number 5, Rishabh Pant, is a guy who's kind of crazy and all over the place, right? He can hit those big sixes, but there's a lack of...
There's a chance, as we saw in this match, that he makes a mistake and he immediately gets results and punishment.
Yeah, and plays a daft shot, which happens with Pant. He's a remarkable talent, but there is that, sense of maturity.
You need that sort of middle order stability. That's what the job of the number 4 is, and that's really what India is missing.
And to your point, right, why this is so relevant in this match, I know Hafiz didn't get a chance to bat, but for Pakistan...
that's what I was coming to, because Pakistan, for all the nonsense that they've done for the last 30 years, of just like random guys that have no business being in the squad, they made some very intelligent decisions.
Hafiz, right? One of the reasons why he's had such a great run of form in T20Is, he's one of the world's leading run scorers. He hit some of the biggest sixes the last couple of years, is because he was an opener originally, right? And they realized that, hey, we have this weak middle order. We need a guy who's a senior, experienced pro head who can come in at number 4, who can bash the bowling to all parts, but also can consolidate when need be and play that sort of mature, responsible innings,
Right.
especially under pressure, right?
Especially because if let's say the first 2 wickets fall, hopefully one of Babar or Rizwan are still there, and they need someone who can stick around with them for a little bit.
Right, and Hafiz, with the years of experience that he's had in the limited over circuit, can do that, right? And it's one of the reasons.
And the thing is that India has a player like Hafiz. He's just not on the squad. In the squad for I don't know why. Shikhar Dhawan makes perfect sense in this role, right?
Yeah.
He has a lot of power. He can hit. He's a power hitter. He's a big game player.
Yeah,
he's
improved his. There were concerns about his strike rate a couple of years back, but we saw in the IPL he has improved that miles. Right, he's able to hit bowlers, international quality bowlers for sixes effortlessly. The point being, right, like he would be the perfect guy. Didn't pick Shikhar in the squad, and we didn't consider that option. But yeah, it's hurt us, right? And we saw that today. The one other thing I'd mention about the Indian innings that I thought was really instrumental, and even with the failures of the middle order, guys like in the lower middle order, right, like Jadeja, Pandya, and so forth, right? Those guys could have still hit some boundaries here and there. We could have gotten to 165 total. That would have been par. Could have been defendable, right? A huge reason why we didn't do that, and it's not going to be talked about in this match, because he only took 1 wicket. Haris Shroff. Now, I've actually been critical on the show beforehand when I've watched him play ODIs in South Africa and so forth, and my criticism of him has been that he has this tendency, despite having the raw ingredients of pace and swing that we saw in this match a little bit, right? To succeed in T20 internationals, he often has failed in the past because he tries to once in every over that I've seen him in these 4 overs that he usually bowls in T20s for Pakistan, he bowls this one delivery that he attempts to bowl that is a bouncer, right? And it often ends up not working because he's got a low arm action. He doesn't really have he doesn't really have he has a short height as well, right? So the short ball that he tries to bowl ends up just being a long hop that people can dispatch to the boundary. But that's why this performance was impressive today, because he didn't do that. You can go back and check. There were almost no attempted bounces in these 4 over spells, especially at the depth, where he is often known, even by certain Pakistani fans, of being sort of a spray gun and giving away runs. He didn't do that today. And the other thing that was so impressive today is he learned this in the last PSL cycle. I saw it a little bit, but I wasn't sure he was going to implement it in international cricket. It's a different kettle of fish, obviously, right, Rohan? He bowled a bunch of really good slower balls, right? Really good slower ball variations. And it made the Indian batsman very, very difficult to hit him and pick him, as a matter of fact. Especially because the guy bowls gas, dude. He bowls close to 150 Ks consistently, and the length that he was bowling for the slower balls and the quicker balls were the exact same. So it became difficult to pick him just on the basis of length.
We sort of need to move on to sort of talk about the chase, because let's talk about the chase.
Yeah. I think that, it started off pretty tough for India, and it subsequently got even more tougher for them to defend this total.
In the first 4 balls, it looks like India might have a chance, because Kumar began swinging the ball around corners, and then 2 balls later, 6-4, and,
it just completely deflated, right? But the one lone high note for India, I'm gonna say here, really was just Varun Chakravarti, right? Because it was an abysmal defense of a subpar total, to put it politely, but he was the one guy who was actually making it slightly difficult for Pakistan opening batsmen, Babar and Rizwan, specifically because they weren't able to read him, like a lot of batsmen. He bowls these leg breaks and off breaks from practically the same action, sort of back of the hand, so it's very difficult to spot that. He was bowling a back of a length as well, so they couldn't really come down the track and hit him that easily at first, right? At least, and bringing him in the power play, I thought was a smart decision from Kohli, because he needed to somehow, confound what are the number 1 and number 2 batsmen in T20 cricket, international cricket, in terms of run scoring, at least in the last couple of years, right? So he had to do it. He did a really good job doing it. I still sort of ruined things, a bit, but his initial start, right?
His initial start was brilliant, and
going for 8 runs. Going for 8 runs.
It was a heroic rear guard action on his part.
Yeah. No, very, very impressive. But then Bhuvi, whatever initial decent work that Bhuvi, to some extent, and Varun more to much more of an extent did, right, really sort of went off the rails, really. And I think a major disappointment for India's perspective, again, was Shami, right? He's the senior bowler. He's expected to deliver some breakthroughs for the side in a run chase where the small total meant that they had to get wickets pretty much consistently to have a chance, and he didn't do that, right?
Yeah, I mean that's just a fact. He wasn't his best.
No, he wasn't. And I think what's disappointing for me, Rohan, is we'll come to the partnership that did win Pakistan the match, because obviously we have to give loads of credit to them. But similar to them, right? Those two learned something from the Indian innings, right? And I think what Shami missed the trick was he didn't learn something from the Pakistani innings, specifically with the type of bowler who's the most similar to him in that bowling lineup, Hassan Ali. Relatively short, relatively skiddy, a guy who can bowl at good gas, close to 90 miles per hour consistently, right? But he should have looked at Hassan Ali in that first innings and said, okay, Hassan Ali was getting tonked when? Because he ended up going for 10 runs and over. But when did he get tonked? He got tonked when he was trying to bowl full pace, consistently, like sort of goodish length and so forth, right? When did Hassan Ali get wickets? He got wickets when he bowled the cutter after he got tonked a little bit. He ended up bowling cutters that moved away from the batsman, right? So in this case, he bowled, because Jadeja was on strike, he bowled off cutters to the left-handed batsman, right? And it allowed him to get a wicket, including that off the set and potentially dangerous Jadeja, right? Now, with Shami, the problem was the two batsmen that were facing up against him, right, were right-handed. And so it should have been a cue for him to bowl that leg cutter more often, because he can bowl it from what I've seen before. But he didn't. He bowled the off cutter, right? And so that came into the batsman. So it became much more easier for them to do that. And with the pitch that wasn't really offering seam or swing by the time he came in during those middle overs for that second spell around, I mean, it just, that lack of recognizing those cues, right? Again, it was not picking up cues and bowling or batting in a way that is suited to the match situation and conditions, which is what we call batting or bowling intelligence. I saw in that vein, and that's not excusable, right? But coming to the two batsmen who played him really well and the rest of the Indian bowling lineup, as a matter of fact, Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan, right? We've said this before. They are the number one and number two batsmen in T20 international cricket in terms of run score in the last 2 years. They've been super successful. We've always rated them on the show, and we saw an exhibition of why. And they deserve all the credit in the world that they can get for masterminding that chase, right? Because yes, it was an admittedly low total on a pitch that was, had some dew to it, which made batting a little bit easier. But it was still a tricky total, especially in a high-pressure match like this, right? And the high pressure matters here as well, Rohan, because as you pointed out a little bit earlier, when we were talking about this, Pakistan don't really have a great middle order. They have a middle order that's very flaky. So they, like India, are a very top-heavy, reliant team. So they need that top order usually to deliver, with the exception of Hafiz, in order for them to, basically chase down totals. And so that's what made the match situation more tense for them, and what made their response to it, which was to score these match-winning half centuries, so valuable, right? And
I have to say, I mean, that's what was really impressive to me. It wasn't. It was just a very organized and well thought out game plan.
Yeah.
Which is words I don't expect to be using with reference to Pakistani cricket.
And especially Pakistani batsmen, right? The
stories... Pakistani batsmen. Because when you talk about Pakistan as a cricket nation, they play these elegant, delightful shots. They're brilliantly weird and fantastic. But at the same time, they're the most infuriating side in cricket, because they will do all of those things and then do a dumb thing and immediately the entire team collapses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and then they've literally been called since the 70s. I'm a cricket fan from historically, so I've gone back and read stories about this match and watched footage of it. the title of Panikistan, which was used by a lot of cricket writers even back in the 70s, has still applied usually to the Pakistani cricket today, right? This is a 50-year-old saga, but today none of that was in evidence, and
it was just complete controlled destruction. My favorite stat in this match was control percentage, which ESPN Cricket Info tracks, which is basically, for those unaware, how much control a batsman has over the shot he plays. Because he put the ball where he wants to put it. Roughly speaking, a 78% control percentage is pretty good. It means you're generally in control of what you're doing. 80%, that's 80 to 85, that's really good. 85 to 90, great. Anything above 90 is almost superhuman. Mohammad Rizwan had a 93% control percentage.
Incredible.
Which is just like every ball it meant every single ball he hit, barring one or two here and there, he put exactly where he wanted it to go.
Yeah, and you know, the actual match, how it unfolded backs that out, right? Because him and Babar, I should add here, right?
Yeah.
They were so spot on in their placement, right, of the cricketing ball that even when they played aerial shots, none of them gave any catching chances to any of the Indian fielders throughout the innings. It was that clinical, right? Because sometimes you get 10-wicket victories and you're chasing down a smaller target. You know, somebody gets dropped here and there. It's very common when you have a 10-wicket win. No, not a single chance went down, nothing. It was just them completely bossing the chase. And the other reason why they bossed the chase was because they punished the Indian bowlers the moment they bowled even slightly short, right? We talked about how Virat Kohli did this with Pakistan strike bowlers whenever they bowled slightly short, Shaheen and Hassan, because he realized that the pitch was slightly slow, so the sort of ball would sit up more in the wicket and be easier to sort of dispatch, if you will, right? But they did it extremely well, right? Babar, did this off the spinners, especially off Jadeja, right, who had a bad match, largely because what he did was, and it was a technical thing that was so impressive, right? Because what he did was he shifted his left leg, right, well outside leg stump, so that created space to which he could hit the ball off. Then he moved his back leg to sort of deeper into the crease, right? So almost near the stumps, to sort of convert even marginally back of a length deliveries that effectively into long hops to the length, because that's by the time the ball reached the bat, that's where it was essentially landing in terms of height. And then once he had that landing, right, he kept on, making these sometimes big, sometimes small, but irrespective of the degree to which it moved, his hips moved really quickly. And so what that did was he generated sort of the torque, and he generated the sort of power onto the shot effectively, right? So he was able to hit the ball really hard, even sometimes on the ground, and hit it for four and so forth. Brilliant, right?
Mohammad Rizwan's most effective shot was the pull.
Yeah.
Because he would just rock back and just pull it. Because of course he would. Why would you do anything else? It's the safest shot to play
on this wicket. He did it with a downswing.
It's not particularly quick. We don't have a Lockie Ferguson. India doesn't have a Lockie Ferguson. We don't have to consider that. So if you're a batsman, of course you just lean back and pull it.
Yeah, we don't, even though somebody like Bumrah and Shami can bowl pace, they're relatively shorter bowlers, and so they don't not necessarily always get that bounce, and they weren't getting that much bounce off this wicket either, and we weren't really bowling the cutters effectively. So he really exploited that really well. And to your point, right, one of the reasons why the pull shot was so effective for him, right, Rohan, was because he crouched a little bit lower, actually. So he bent his knees a little bit lower, and what that does is it creates like a low sort of center of gravity. Exactly, right? And what that effectively means is that it gives him a better position when he's playing that pull shot. It gives him a better position and angle to transfer the weight / keep the ball on the downswing, i.e. down the ground, right? Keep the ball on the ground, I should say, when playing that horizontal bat shot. And it has the added advantage of converting deliveries that were even slightly back of a length into half trackers by the time it hits the bat, right? So just magnificent exploitation, recognition of a wicket, exploitation of the bowler's weaknesses, and conversion of length. And it really, no amount of praise is
it was the most complete and comprehensive victory I've ever seen of Pakistan.
Yeah,
Since,
no,
like, the
no amount of praise is light for this batting display. And as an Indian fan, even though we were on the receiving side, I'm glad to have seen it.
So let's do one last thing before we have to sign off. Takeaways.
India played like Pakistan. and Pakistan
played like
India when they're successful in the mid-overs tournaments. But yeah, on that note, I think it's as good as any to sign off. We should mention for all our regular viewers, we will be sort of doing these reviews for certain matches more on a weekly basis. We've been doing them on a daily basis more often, but we're going to take a little bit of a step back. There's also some
IPL chaos really got to us, and we were exhausted by the end of it.
Yeah. So we're going to take a little bit of time off, but we do have other content in store for you as well. The Ashes are coming up. We're going to be doing series reviews for that in anticipation.
That's going to be fun.
Yep, that is. But
because on one hand you get to laugh at Australia, on the other hand you get to laugh at England, and I think if you're an English fan you get to laugh at the Australians, and if you're an Australian fan or just a fan of cricket you can laugh at England.
Yeah, and if you're an India and Pakistan fan you can laugh at both. So
exactly.
Yeah, but no,
everyone wins.
Yes, but there's a lot of content in store. Stay tuned for all of it. We'll be there to cover it, provide it, and engage with you guys. As usual, stay safe. See us next time, and yeah, take care. Bye.
See ya.